This is Thorin's YouTube channel. Make sure you're tuning in, hitting subscribe.
Right, I'm here for another episode of Reflections, and my guest for this one is going to be Elude, who is a very old school 1.6 pro. Spoiler, to be fair, anyone who played pro in 1.6 is old school no matter when they started, but you actually were there literally 20 years ago, a long time ago. So obviously, I want to go back in the time machine and ask about that period, because here's the thing, Elude. I actually was quite weird for a European in the sense that I actually, because I was a super nerd about esports even back then, I did actually follow like CalInvite and all the early days of CS, even though like we had our own circuit in Europe, obviously, and I did know like all the top teams, X3 and the Tau guys and DOP and all the old school names you can remember. But actually, to me, you were one of the newer players that came along in the era when tech came along. So what I want to know was, were you actually playing at the beginning of CS? I know you were young, but did you play like in the X3 days and the betas and stuff like that? Were you playing at that period, or was it just years later you came along?
Yeah, so no, we did. So, tech actually had its history go back to the X3 days. So, 2000, early 2000, before CalInvite, the league was like OGL or something. Yes. It was like Online Gaming League or something. There wasn't a CalInvite, and you can kind of like schedule your own matches. And the team of the day back then was X3. I don't remember much. I just remember they were always in the top of the rankings, and they had some absurd record like 1,001. They never lost. And then sometime after that, there was like an RITD league. I don't know if Midway ran it or he just helped run it. I think so, yes. That was kind of like the Premier League on top of OGL. So, we played in the OGL. I think we got fairly good before people stopped playing in it. And then everyone kind of moved over to RITD. I don't know if we ever made it into that league, but then we kind of joined Cal in like season 3 or 4. So when it was still in its pretty early stages. But the history of tech, it started as a West Coast team, which is the funniest thing to me. So we were famous for being a California team, a Texas team, but we started on the West Coast. So my brother, him and all his buddies started tech, and it was like all of his high school friends, and there was like 20 people on our roster. And then at some point, it got whittled down, and then we moved to Texas in 2001, and the team kind of changed over time as that, and recruited different people, but it started out as a West Coast team, so that's where we got all our crazy aim at from the West Coast.
We should talk about that actually as maybe an opener to the interview. Obviously, your brother, whose alias was Gouki, if people don't know, back in the day, right? It's funny because actually, I did another interview where someone referenced this, but basically, back at the time, the joke was to everyone else, like, if they knew Elude when you were like a star player and you were the best player in the team or one of the best in the league, they actually thought it was the other way around. It was like, that's actually like Elude's brother. And like, I don't know why he lets him play in the team, because like famously, look, there's no diss to Gouki. He was more of like a thinker. He wasn't like a super insane player. He wasn't like some crazy aimer or something compared to you. So actually, I wanted to know that. Like, it sounds like it was the other way around. It wasn't this like you joined your brother's team and he was like, let my brother play.
So it was the other word. So it was his team with his friends. And like, I never got to play in the OGL matches because there's 20 people on the roster. So unless people flaked out, I didn't make the team. So I had actually quit tech, and I went off and played in like Cal Open or main teams. And it's a funny story how I got back on the team. Is sometime after we moved back to Texas, there was a couple guys on our team. It was Peld and Remy. There were some Las Vegas people he'd recruited on the team, and they snuck me into a tryout with my own brother to get back into tech under an alias, and I didn't talk in the mic.
You were aliasing when playing with your own brother.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he didn't think I was any good. And honestly, back in the day, like he was way better than me, and all his buddies were better. So I had to go off and like learn how to be good at the game. But I just think it's hilarious. I had to sneak to get back onto tech because people, associate me and him with tech. But there was a long period of time where I wasn't actually even on the team. Kind of how like my little brother was too. He wasn't on the team and doing his own thing in leagues. So they snuck me in the team, and I played good in the tryout, and then he let me join the team again. And then that's when we went to our next CPL, which I think was like the summer 2002 CPL. So some weird period after we moved to Texas between that summer, I kind of rejoined tech after I had left it for a little bit.
Right. When you were around this time period, as you said, this is when you were just a young guy, up and coming. So when do you actually think you start to hit your stride and get like really good individually? When would you say?
It was probably sometime after that summer CPL. I got a taste of the competition, and then I just remember going back and just playing all the time. I'd scram at practice, and I was like super motivated to like be good at the game. And then, that next, I think, Winter 2000 CPL is when we broke out, and kind of people were like, oh, wait, these guys actually are pretty good at the game. Because before that, we had just joined Invite, and we went to the CPL, but we got knocked out in the first round. It's kind of a funny story with that, too. In the first CPL we went to, we didn't know what we were doing. The 2002 CPL Summer, we showed up, and nobody told us you could bring your own computer, so we didn't bring our computers with us. They said there was like some practice area. So we show up, and there's like...
There was definitely no practice PCs you could... It was basically the tournament PCs if they let you play on it, right?
Kinda. They had like a few set of... So there's like 10 set aside, and like it was impossible to get on there because everybody lined up. So we were like sitting there twiddling our thumbs. And I remember we did a practice match with like one of the European teams, and we hung in there with them. So like a bunch of scrappy kids that barely knew how to play, we hung in there with this European... It was like Spacebar or something. So that was a pretty funny story. But, what got me on that CPL is what people don't remember is how crazy the seeding was. In the early days, it was just like a guessing game for the people that ran the tournament. So, we were actually in Cal Invite at the time, and we got paired up in the first round, which was like single elimination to make the double elimination with another Cal Invite team. So it was like, we pleaded our case. They wouldn't listen to us. Every other Cal Invite team was playing like some open team, and we got paired up. I think it was like TSO, which Midway, it was like his last LAN tournament. So we played Midway and TSO in the first round, and we got knocked out. Like it was like 13-10 or something. So it was a close game, but it was like we shouldn't have been playing another Cal Invite team single elimination. So that was kind of our first taste of disappointment at the CPL, is learning about how they did the seeding.
After this, the next CPL, the Winter 2002 one, as you say, was the breakout, because this is where you guys made top 12. And I remember this one. I looked up the details as well. But in this one, in the upper bracket, you lost to Team 9, who was absolutely one of the best teams in the world that people don't know. Like, they were like second at the previous, like whatever. Like, this is one of the better teams, like in Europe, But then you did this like epic run in the lower bracket where you just beat all these NA teams you played. Like, as you say, like that must be where you gained some respect from people, right? Like, this is a LAN.
Yeah, so before that was the Lethal Gamers tournament, which we, I had to look back. I forgot we had did this when I looked up kind of what we did. We placed third at the Lethal Gamers tournament, which there was a bunch of the good Texas teams. There was like 4K and another couple of European teams that actually showed up to this one. And I think we ended up placing like third. So we beat most of the, kind of mid-tier teams. And so people realized like, hey, these guys actually, they're playing okay online. And then, we beat a bunch of good teams at the LG. And then so we get to the CPL, and there's a funny story with that. So I think, Funk was on our team for that CPL. And he was very, very interesting character. He was kind of eccentric. He was a good guy. I don't have any ill feelings. But the first match we played, that Tech 9 match, he had something wrong with his mouse or his mouse pad, and he had issues with his mouse skates. I think we almost got disqualified or something because he left the tournament area to go find another mouse, and the admins were like, you can't leave during the middle of a match. And we're like, we don't know where he went. He came back, and we didn't. I think we won one round, and they completely outclassed us like all the European teams did. But he actually quit in the middle of the tournament. So like after that, I don't remember exactly how it all went down, but maybe there's some frustration that he left the tournament area or something. But he quit, packed up his bags, and went home. So we had to play with a different person. But luckily at that time, CPL, we had like 6 people on our 6 or 7 people. So we had a backup there that could have played. So then I don't think he played in any of the lower bracket matches, but we did win a bunch of matches and kind of made top 10, but people didn't really see that as top 10. Really top 10 was when you made top 8. That was a pretty good accomplishment for CPL,
Yes. Well, actually, along those lines, I did want to ask about the Funk topic, because this is the era when, remember, it was only like the previous year when he had that story with Jaden and those guys where this PC got trashed and everyone hated him in the community. And this was actually one of the teams which was supposed to like bring him back and rehabilitate him. But as you say, this is where I have a good memory, mate. Similarly, I remember you telling me this story that in that match as well, he would just do stuff like change his mouse sensitivity during the match, which is stuff like you don't do as a pro, obviously. Like, as you say, I noticed this is the interesting thing, is how we've all grown up and matured. Almost everyone I've interviewed from this era now, dude, doesn't actually really hate Funk at all. And they all sort of look back like, whatever, But at the time, explain it to me. Like, dude, he was like public enemy number 1. He was a massive villain, right? And I know you guys had beef at this time when he left the team, right?
Maybe it's so long ago I don't remember. I probably blocked out all the bad stuff. But what I do,
Okay.
he was a good dude. Like we'd go over his house, me and my brother, and we'd like LAN at his house. We had a good time. It was fun. Like everything would be good. I think what happened with him, he wanted to do so well that it kind of got to him. So like when matches started or we started playing on LAN, he just couldn't handle it. I don't know. It just something switched to him, and leading up to that, he'd be perfectly fine. But then it just ran off the rails or something, But other than that, he was fine. He was a good teammate.
After this period was when people would say, arguably, it's the golden era of tech, right? Because this is when you got in. The joke was, when the 3D guys had their shift and made their super team, you were guys who benefited from it because you got De Beers and Jaden in, who were skilled players. You brought in Ice Salmon from the Riot squad. This was like, if people don't know, this is a top lineup of players, and it was a good team. This is the team that obviously famously went to the KillerLAN, but we'll get to that in a second. When this team got made, what was the logic here? Did you somehow parlay the CPL result into getting these players? How did you mix it? It's kind of like a mini super team, right?
Honestly, that's exactly how. So we kind of had scrappy players up to that. So it was me and my brother, and a bunch of blue collar scrappy players, which they were great. But you kind of needed some firepower if you were going to compete at the highest level. So after every CPL, I don't know what it was, but people always quit. So it's not like we kicked people from the team, but even if you did well, everyone would be like, all right, man, I got to focus on school this year. My parents don't want me to play anymore. So everyone left our team. So every CPL, you're reshuffling your roster, it seemed like, after it. And I don't remember exactly who it was, but we recruited one of the Riot squad members. I don't know if it was Ice Salmon or Grazzle. And, we had seen that team disbanded, and we were like, okay, we kind of want Jaden and De Beers on our team because we knew who were there. They were on 3D, and we're like, I don't know if we'll pull this off, but we'll get these two guys, and they're friends with them, so maybe they'll pull it off. And then somehow, all of the Riot Squad guys basically came over and joined our team. So it was me and my brother and a bunch of the Riot Squad guys. So it kind of like shuffled its way into the self. But I think I vaguely remember that, we kind of wanted that to happen. We're like, we're going to get this guy, and he's going to talk to him, and they'll get them to join, and it ended up working that way.
When you got those guys, I mean, the funny thing is now, in hindsight, it just seems obvious people should have picked these players up because, at the time, I get it in the sense, if you're a casual fan, what I have to explain is this. Because CPLs were like, there was 2 per year and they were just like the be-all, end-all. If you failed like they'd done it, that like summer one with 3D, that really was just like, right, you're done in this town, get the fuck. Like, that was sort of the vibe, right? But the stupid thing was, like, anyone with the eyes could see these are 2 mega fucking skilled players, right?
Yeah, so you hit the nail on that. So like the only tournaments we had between like little LAN tournaments was the CPL. So there was no, like, the Europeans had, DreamHack or ES or whatever tournaments they had other kind of major tournaments. So we brought them on the team because we wanted some more skill power. But looking back, I've seen Counter-Strike analysis over the years, and they talk about position players. And then I look back on some of our lineups, and the ones that we were more successful for, had more traditional Counter-Strike position roles. And this team was like a superstar team with 4 number 1 player. I don't know what the number is, but we were all playing the same role. And then my brother was like position number 5 and like trying to keep the glue together. So like when it was clicking, it was unstoppable. Even like online and on LAN, when we clicked, people couldn't beat us. But when it wasn't clicking, there was no like person to pull us up, the consistent part. So it was kind of up and down, and it went online and on LAN.
When you came, as I say, in this next year, one of the big moments, obviously, was when you went to this tournament, KillerLAN. Now, if you're a casual fan, don't worry, that's not a name that anyone's ever heard since or before. Like that, this was the one time. But the significant detail was this: since the CPL we just referenced, where you've placed top 12, was won by Team 3D, who were a North American team, and they were number 1. The record was they'd beaten all the NA teams, and to win the tournament, they came from the upper bracket. So when you beat them at this LAN in the finals, this was the first time they'd ever lost on LAN to an NA team. This was a big deal. Like, I know that they themselves, by the way, do, because I was friends with them all, they all tried to downplay it, like, oh, who cares, it's not the CPL. I can tell you they were bothered by that. Like, obviously, like, because that's like a status thing, isn't it? Like, we're unbeaten, like, and crucially, those players, they did have the arrogance of, like, we're up here and everyone else in NA is, like, down here. Maybe the Europeans are at the same level as us, but we're up here, So I know, like, I remember famously, like, there's some photos of this, like, fucking Moto's face looks like someone slapped him or something, mate. You know what I mean? Like, give me some thoughts on this tournament and this run. It must have been epic.
So, all of that led up. So there was kind of couple storylines. So like, the 3D guys some of them were part of those X3 days. So, like we'd seen them since they were, online when we were first scrappy little team, playing in OGL League. And then, we didn't participate in Winter CPL 2001, but we saw this, they're this legendary team that beats the Europeans and nobody else beats the Europeans.
Yes.
And then, part of that storyline was, Jaden and Bears, they wanted to get their revenge. So we were all super fired up. We were pumped. We were like, if they're coming to this LAN tournament, there was a bunch of good teams there, like GX, Forsaken, bunch of the Texas teams. And we were like, we're going to beat them. We were fully determined for like months. So this was going to be our tournament. We were going to work towards it and we were going to beat it. And, it wasn't just that they'd never lost a LAN before. They'd never lost a match to an American team. So we played them the first round. We played them in the upper bracket final. And we actually beat them really bad. It was like 13-4. So, we beat them in the upper bracket final. They went down. I think they beat GX in the loser bracket final. And they came back to the upper bracket final, and then we beat them again. So it was like we beat them twice in one LAN. They probably downplayed it a little bit because what I do remember, K-Sharp didn't go to the LAN tournament.
Oh, that's right.
So
they used Kane instead, yes.
They had one of their other players. So, I always think back what it would have been like if he was there. I do think we would have beat them that first map because we were so good on, I think it was Inferno. And we beat them so bad that it wouldn't have probably mattered. But, maybe the finals might have turned out different. And with K-Sharp, they would have played a little bit better. But, still, they had 6 or 7 people on their team. They were all pretty good. So it wasn't like they pulled some guy off the street that never played Counter-Strike before.
The problem is, though, since this is a story that involves the Bears, people know where this is going if they've watched any other videos. Because famously, the joke with the Bears, this is my line, was he always was a top NA player, except the days of the CPL. Somehow at the CPL, you know what I'm talking about. I've never seen more crazy things happen to one guy. Like, the joke is he was the most unlucky player ever. So at this CPL Summer, because of this result, you guys came in as like, hey, maybe they could go top 3, top 5. People were really, positive about what this could be, because the logic was if you can beat Team 3, maybe you can do what Team 3 does. But obviously people will know this was kind of a bombed LAN, right? It all went to shit. Give me your thoughts. What happened?
So, looking back, it's funny. You have so many years, and since I talked to my brother about this, we reminisce about, what went wrong. I think, that determination and kind of hungerness that we had before the KillerLAN, we let it all go away and we got to our head. So, I don't even remember how much we practiced between KillerLAN and CPL, because I think it was like a month before. So for like a month, we barely, practiced. We were like, no, we just beat 3D. We won this LAN. We don't need to practice. And, I think we started fighting a little bit. So there was infighting, and we went to the LG, and I think we lost to a team we probably shouldn't have lost to right before the tournament. But, I think we just psyched ourselves out so bad. And, looking back, that we didn't have the right mindset going in, and it didn't matter who we were going to play. I know we lost to like Forsaken in the first round, and it was like the biggest upset ever. But we would have lost to, I think, any team that tournament.
Right.
It didn't matter. Like, I just remember at one point in the Forsaken match, we were, it was a pretty close match to start. It was like 3-3 or something. But I remember stopping and looking over, and like everyone, including myself, had like this shell-shocked look on our face. Like,
right.
This team is kind of fighting us harder than we would expect, and we're kind of losing. And then it just snowballed after that. And then, so we lose that first match in pretty bad fashion. It might have been like 13-10 score, but we should have beat them. The caliber team we were. And then, we didn't say another word to each other for the rest of the tournament. So, the schedule's printed. We know we played the next morning at like 10 a.m. or something. We didn't even know if everyone was going to show up to that next round, because we were just completely defeated after one loss. So it kind of showed you the mindset of that team. Like, okay, we got kicked in the teeth, but we didn't rebound. We should have fought and kind of went through the losers bracket, because we lost to another team that was probably shouldn't have lost to. I think it was like TSG or something. But we could have ran through the loser bracket. We didn't have any fight after that first loss and just kind of gave up.
What would you say to that? Like, do you believe in the De Beers curse?
No, De Beers is great. He was great online. We played in so many LAN tournaments. It was just the thing with the CPL. There was so much pressure on it for the American teams. And, looking back, the American teams really had no chance. The European teams, they spent all their money. They had sponsors. I think they were even older in age. So,
right.
Probably came from higher socioeconomic standards. They had better LAN connections at home. They played more LAN tournaments. There's no reason an American team should have ever beat a European team. We were disadvantaged on every level. So, just depended on which one you played in the bracket. So if you did beat one, they did something really wrong, or you just overcame so much. So, the only other team that kind of operated like that at the time was 3D. So it was like 3D operating like a professional team. All the Europeans that came over, and later the South American teams, but the rest of the American teams were kind of scrappy, blue collar, show up, some of them missing shoelaces in their shoes. Just kind of the scrappy team, blue collar team,
One thing I wanted to ask you about, I know you said that someone sent you that video I did where I explained who you were, because I had a clever title if people don't know, which is because in the modern day, Nothing is a very famous later 1.6 player, and it turns out his surname is Gilbert. People don't know that, even though you're no relation, you obviously famously you were the other Gilbert, you were the first one that we really knew because Elude was a star player, right? One thing you'll notice, because I mentioned a lot of the narratives that I remembered in that, but one I really want to ask you about was this, which is, because I knew the top elite players from NA, one of the first things they told me, because they were mega, one thing these guys were good at, because they were arrogant, like I said, is they were really good at finding reasons to downplay other people. They wouldn't just do it for no reason, just I'm better. So in your case, you're right, when you said that, I even remembered it. Not only did they go, yeah, but K-Shot wasn't at the KillerLAN or whatever. The other thing they always said about Elude was this, they were always it's just because he has an amazing internet connection, because you had a fucking super sick low ping connection, right? And if people don't know, if you are in Texas, that is actually the best spot to be, because if you play people from the East Coast, you can always get a half decent ping, right? Give me your thoughts on this. Was it really good? Were they just hating by saying that? What do you think?
People were just hating back in the day. We had a normal Comcast internet connection. Okay. We lived in Texas. I think CPL was based out of Texas. So there was always this weird dance in the online matches of what server you played on, because, we'd have West Coast teams that were all West Coast, or East Coast teams that were all East Coast. So sometimes, you'd play on a Texas server, maybe we'd have a 30 ping advantage, but you switch around. It was never completely unfair. Right. But, even versus the other Texas team. So, I remember there was something that came out. The thing that didn't benefit me in the early days, there wasn't the game sense stuff, or the frag, or the frag, it's just scoreboards and, right. Demos. But I remember they came out with GotSense and did it for past years, and it kind of vindicated me, because the couple of winter CPLs, 2002 or 2003, the GotSense scores that they reproduced for those, I was on the top of it matched what I did on
right, right.
And mine, I'm I know they were saying these things, I know they're not real. It was just always you didn't do it on LAN, and if you didn't do it on LAN, they were always kind of downplaying you. And if you ever had one bad match, it's going to be on LAN, and they don't remember the bad matches you had online. It was just on LAN. And they called me a cheater early in my career, which I loved. It kind of fueled me, because I was all right, if you think I'm so good that I'm cheating, it just kind of boosted my ego more. So I kind of liked it. The online stuff got a little bit old, because we went to LAN tournaments all the time. We'd go to Texas LAN tournaments. We'd play great at those. CPL was the one that kind of got away, but for various reasons, they just never fully went our way. That first one where we went 9-12, if we'd won one more match and made top 8, this would have never been
yeah, exactly.
No one would have ever said you're online. And so the difference between one match or a couple matches at a different one. So I don't worry about it too much. I had a lot of fun playing. I don't have many regrets. No, I didn't have a very amazing internet connection. I have a normal Comcast.
Well, the other thing as well, and this is another thing I referenced, which you will be very well aware of. Another thing I do think that actually hurt your rep was, famously at the time, GotFrag used to do this fun awards. You know what I'm talking about here. And so they'd give obviously your traditional ones, best player in the tournament, but they did one where it was sort of a jokey one, and it was something most overrated player or almost underweight. It was one of these. It was sort of a diss. And basically, I remember you were quite a young player. You took this quite to heart, right? Didn't you say something? Didn't you not do interviews with them for a while? So you got kind of offended, right?
Yeah, it was we had just lost 2003 CPL in spectacular fashion, and then that article came out, and I was man, this is a team sport. I played terrible, but our entire team played terrible. Even if I had played great, we probably still would have lost those matches. But I just probably pouted a little bit too much, and I remember I was I'm not giving you guys my demos anymore, and because I had always uploaded my demos every week. And I was like giving them free content, and but they could say what they wanted. That was fine, and I don't have any ill feelings now. Looking back, I deserved it, and the whole team deserved it because we were the most overrated. We were like projected to be top 3 or 4. We didn't even win but like one match. So I pouted a little bit because I was probably like 17 or 18 years old at that time. A little bit older now, I probably react a little bit different.
One of the other things as well is, even though they're not right in this regard, I think that's also why some of the old guard used to like hate on you, because at the time the perception was, if you're just the best, it's actually the opposite. People used to keep demo releases as minimal as possible, and you only release one if it's like so insane. The idea is like, put my stock way up here. So people will know back in the day, like there was a period where there was like, 5K sharp POVs like ever or whatever, and everyone had seen them, and hence why his status was impossibly high, because it was like the 5 best demos ever or whatever. But you used to, for real, release like almost every single match. You would just release your POV. So I know even back then the perception was like, he's just doing that for like attention or whatever. But I actually thought that was cool doing it. Same with Jaden in your team. That it was so rare for pros to actually be like open with that when good players would release their POV demos, it made a big difference. Like it meant a lot of people did know like how good you were and could see the great matches, right? Did you have a sense back then of either community or media or what was it?
Yeah, because back in the day, you watch esports now, and you can like log into Twitch or YouTube or something, and you can watch matches. For the longest time, you couldn't even watch a match live. They might have HLTV or the Counter-Strike in-game viewer, but it was always terrible. Most people watched matches on a text-based IRC, so like it would say this person killed this person, but you don't know what happened. It's just the thing on the line. That's actually how my dad watched all our CPLs. We would set up IRC before we left, and he would just watch it'd say when the game is, and he'd watch the line, and he'd see, but he didn't know what happened. I don't think he's ever even seen us play the game. But it was just something fun to do. That's probably like why we had such a cult following among the North American, teams. People loved watching us, in the Jaden DeBears days. Those were probably the most popular demos because we would leave our voice comms on.
Yes.
And like we weren't hiding, we weren't doing strategy. We would like make fun of each other the entire time we were playing. There was like a famous demo where I uploaded that I was chasing frags, and there was a guy camping out in his base. And DeBears is like, don't chase him, Jonathan. Don't go. You're gonna die. And like I peek the corner and he kills me. And then like this day it would be a GIF or a meme or something. But like back in the day, everyone thought that was hilarious. So we weren't hiding any strats. Maybe it was some attention, but it was just all good fun. Part of playing video games. It was just fun.
Another thing you actually figured out way earlier than a lot of people, and I always thought this was so sad, was to make a movie. Like back then, people either did one of two things. Either one, there was no movie, which, by the way, that has aged so badly as a decision, because now, as you say, it's not like there's even, by the way, it wasn't streams back then, so there aren't videos you can go watch all the matches, or they're going to be super bad quality. So the sad thing is a lot of really great players, by the way, have just been forgotten in history because like, they sort of don't exist. And then the other thing was, even when sometimes there would be a movie, if you don't participate, if you just let some fan make it, it could be fucking terrible. Like I noticed in your case, didn't you actually yourself make the movie? Like you gathered your own demos and made it, right? And by the way, the second one was really good.
Yeah, so the first, someone made a movie of me or our team, and it wasn't very good, like you said. So I was like, man, I really liked Counter-Strike movies back in the day. The one that got me was like the Electronic Warfare one for the CPL, where it was like had the in-game sound. It was like the greatest movie I've ever seen. So like that. That inspired me. I was like, man, I want to make a movie. So like, I think I'd made another movie and it wasn't very good. So like, I reached out to some of like the top, CS movie makers. I was like, hey guys, how do you make a movie? And they told me all the software. They told me what you want to do, and they like kind of gave me pointers and tips. I think they're on the credits if you still have the movie somewhere.
Right.
But like, part of that was, I don't remember when it came out, but I wanted to make a movie that had like clips from when we played on LAN, because you're always fighting the narrative that, oh, you're online and LAN. So like I made this movie and half of the clips were from LAN. So like if you go back and watch it now and you thought I was an online player, you won't know which one of those clips were from online or LAN, because half of them were online. So I did that on purpose. I was like kind of like out there like, hey, you guys, I'm not this online player. I actually played good on LAN. Here's some clips to prove it, And it was just fun. It was a fun process to make, content. Then, I'd always thought about making another one, like tech, like years later after I got done playing, like making a history of tech movie, because I think I still have all of our old demos saved on a hard drive somewhere. So I don't know if you can still access them, but it'd probably be too hard to do that now. But I wish I had done that too.
Sure. One of the things I wanted to ask was, like, years and years later, like, no one's going to get fucking mad at an opinion now. So I'll just ask you straight up, how good do you actually think you were at your prime? Like, to me, you were an elite player in NA. You were very good.
You know, in 2002 and 3, when I was like peak prime, I was probably top 2 or 3. I think if you put me on in a 10-man roster, I would be top fragger on, you know, most teams that day. So, you know, I was pretty confident in my abilities. You know, but you know, you had to do that consistently, and you had to do it on LAN. And the different thing was, you know, the meta on LAN was a little bit different, which it wasn't tough for me to figure out, but you kind of had to figure it out as you're going along each tournament. But, you know, I definitely think back in the day I was top 3, top 4, top 5 for those couple of years. After 2003, I think I stopped practicing as much. So I don't know where I'd rank myself there because I wasn't as hungry. But, you know, those 2 years definitely would be, I thought I was top 3 or 5 in America.
Give people a sense of, like, what was your skill set? What was your style? Like, I can remember just from pure memory alone, you had an amazing deagle.
Yeah, so you know, I didn't do the deagle as much in matches. You know, that would make the highlight reel, but you didn't really buy that in professional match. So, you know, I was pretty decent with pistols. So, you know, I'd get a couple kills on pistol round, and I love the eco rounds, man. You know, I wanted to see those. My goal was to get as many frags as possible every match. I didn't care what it took. You know, that was sometimes to my detriment, but like pistol round, I try to kill at least 1 or 2, and then eco round, I would, you know, especially online, I'd go chase them down. So it probably inflated my numbers a little bit. But, you know, rifling is where I was. You know, I love to rotate around the map and just rifle. And the terrorist side in the early days, I was the entry fragger. I would go in first, you know, take out a whole bomb site and then clean up the rest of the kills. So, you know, I usually, for the longest time when I was at my peak, I knew I could turn around a corner, kill at least one guy before he got me. So it was kind of, I was that gung-ho entry fragger. I was going to have the number 1 score on the top of the scoreboard. So it was competing against the other team, but, you know, in the superstar lineups, you'd want to compete with each other. So, you know, that's kind of why DeBears, Jaden, those lineups, we had fun because, you know, we would be rivaling with each other, you know, trying to get more kills than each other.
By the way, one detail, I actually think I forgot to put this in that video about you, even though aside from that, I did a pretty good job like remembering shit. One detail I forgot, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right from memory on this, wasn't another way you broke out, was, you remember this, they did this one-off fucking year of this league where it was like the Cal Draft League, and it wasn't like normal. Yeah, remember? And so what they did is they had the top players, like, you know, Bullseye or whatever. Each of them had a team, and then the idea was like proper sports, you drafted. And I remember, because not only were you releasing the PFs, but you fucking smurfed in this tournament. Like, you were just wrecking everyone, right? This was one of like your breakout events, right?
So that was probably before I started getting really good. I think that was somewhere before Winter CPL 2002. It was the Cal Draft. It was the Cal Draft League, and I remember I put my hat in, and they didn't select everybody. Like 400 people applied, and I think I was like the last pick for some team.
Okay.
And I think I was on Jaden's team. I don't remember exactly. Nice. So that's maybe why he kind of agreed to play with us. And, you know, it kind of helped my skill set because I was able to play with better people against even more better people, because the only time you would play is in matches. But then, you know, suddenly I'm scrimming with people like Jaden, and like I'm doing well, and I keep getting better, and it just kind of snowballed from there. But that, you know, that's a pretty funny detail. I forgot about that. Yeah, that definitely helped. If I hadn't done that, I don't think I would have been as good as quick as I was.
Yes. I just remember that randomly.
There was one thing in the video you did. There was you had one detail wrong. The gun through the fence is actually even more tragic story.
Come on then.
Yeah,
this isn't like a CPL though, right? It's like a real live tournament match, was it?
So even worse. So 2003 CPL, we lose out, and we had DeBears, Jaden, and ESEA, and my brother. The next month was the ESWC qualifier. And it was in California, and we had like pre-qualified, and the only way you could, in people that pre-qualified were given this like $800 gaming computer, which was like top of the line back then. So like the only way to get it is if you went to the tournament. So we were like stayed together as a team, quote unquote, but we never practiced or played. And, you know, like we knew after that tournament was over, we were gonna, you know, disband, because that's what teams did after CPL. But so we go to the ESWC qualifier. I don't remember what happened, but we played a team. We were in the upper bracket, like the second round, like the semifinals, and we're playing 3D on LAN, and we were beating them. It was like 10-5 with the tech lineup. a month after the CPL, hadn't played together, hadn't practiced, and we're beating them 10-5. And I don't know if it was that round or some later round, but that's when the gun went through the fence. And then we slowly started snowballing and losing after that. So I always wonder, like what would have happened if that gun didn't go through the fence? We didn't lose our composure. We somehow beat them. Maybe this team stays together. It's just absurd that, we almost beat 3D, who was, back on form at that time, in a tournament. So I got a good chuckle out of that, because that was kind of like a epitome of, what happened to our team at some of these tournaments.
Sure. One of the later lineups you had, I remember you guys got Moses, because at the time, like he left the U5 team. I think he was like briefly out of the game, then he came back in with you or something. Do you remember this one when he came into Tech?
Yeah, so we called that, I saw my note, we called that Superstar lineup number 2. So, we had Moses, I think Jaden rejoined, Tool, and then we had Gosu. So we played that online season, and we won like every match that season. We were just dominating people. We were doing the stuff we did in 2003, but even better. Like we were just running around fragging and having fun. And I think we played in a couple LANs and did fine. And then the crazy thing with that lineup was we were doing so well online, everything was clicking. And then like 2 weeks before the tournament, Gosu was on our team, and his dad was like, "You can't play in CPL this year." And we're like, "Oh my God, we're doing so like." So we pulled my brother out of retirement. He was still a little rusty, so my brother ended up having to sub in the CPL. And these were the days where you didn't have subs at these CPLs. Like you went with the 5 you practiced with for 6 months. So like that was another one. Like I wonder what would have happened if Gosu had better grades and didn't get kicked out of.
If people don't know as well, this is a player where, because as you say, it's not like he went to the CPLs. He's not like famous in history. But I remember watching POV. That guy was a really skilled player, but he was like an up and comer, right?
Great. Yeah, he would play at all the LANs. When he was when we were dominating all the Texas LANs, he would be on like the runner-up teams or something. So we knew he was good, and we gave him a chance. And I think he did good after he left our team. But like it was just completely unfortunate, because we wanted him to play. So it's not like we kicked him off the team. His dad was literally like, "You can't play in the CPL because your grades weren't good enough." And so we were like, "Okay, well, we got to practice with someone." So my brother came out of retirement. It's just a funny story.
By the way, since obviously in CSGO, Moses is famous. In fact, the joke is like he's actually today on the damn recording this, he's still a commentator. He like does all the biggest matches in the world. But he's such it's funny because I know him from back then, but no one else does. And to me, it's always so hilarious whenever I see him, because even though I know him as the guy he is now as well, I'll always remember that like short little fucking guy with the long, crazy locks of hair. He's bald now, if people don't know. He was way less. I mean, look, he was always a social guy, but he wasn't like this like crazy social butterflies now. Who was Moses to you back then as a team? He's also a good player, right?
No, he was a social guy back in the day. I remember we went to the LAN tournament. He was like friends with everybody. So, right. If he's, he was like that back then. I don't remember too much about that period. We just had fun. I don't have any beef on that team. We just had a lot of fun with that team too. And we never really fought. The previous superstar lineup, we were kind of like brothers fighting all the time. This one, we were just, fragging and having fun. But yeah, Moses was very popular. He had a lot of friends. So.
Fair enough. One thing I wanted to know, and it was obviously a question everyone back in the day had, but look, I get that you can't really in an interview give the real answer, so you can give me it now, years later. The obvious problem as well with your career, that's what I always thought, was like, look, in the tech teams, yeah, cool, your brother, it's his team. If you actually wanted to be the best player you could, Elude, you should have just left like every other fucking star player, didn't just gone to another team. Like you should have joined like Rival or 3D or something, right? I'm sure you had offers.
You know what? I tried to remember back if I ever had any offers. I don't know if I had any real ones. I think everyone was kind of like, yeah, he's in tech, he won't leave. So like,
right.
Maybe, if I had ever actually like disbanded and left the team, like in the prime days of my career, maybe after my brother kind of retired, I should have just kind of hung it up. I think I felt a sense of pride to keep it going, but I didn't like being the leader or like the strat caller or being in charge. So, really looking back, I should have just folded it after he left, because it was really his team, and then I inherited it after he quit. But I definitely wonder, maybe if I had tried another team. By the time I did disband the team, I had no motivation. I wasn't practicing anymore. I think this was like 2005, 6. So like it wouldn't have mattered to join another team at that time. I did go through my like old hard drive years ago, and I remember stumbling across a message from Fraud, It vaguely was along the lines of him like trying to recruit me into. I don't know if it was real, but maybe like right before they started, and that's hilarious to think about. If I had like chatted him up on that,
yeah.
I think I didn't even respond to him because like I don't remember, but I remember seeing that. I was like, that'd be funny because they were the.
Yeah, they were the next best NA team. No, the reason why it's interesting you say that, like maybe everyone assumed that, is because, like you say there, it wasn't just your brother alone. I think, from what I remember as well, I think you even maybe told me this. Part of it was you were sort of obsessed with the idea, because that was the whole narrative of like, I've got to get Tech top 8 at CPL like one time, like we've got to sort of make up for all these past ones they're hating on us with, right?
Yeah, kind of. Another joke was I think people used to call it the Elude clan, but even though like I never said that, but I thought that was funny. But yeah, I definitely wanted to, keep our team going and see it successful. We had a good showing at the Source CPL, but that's kind of like an asterisk. But we made it on the stage and got the big check. But it would have been much nicer doing that on a 1.6, which we did go back to after they got rid of Source, which was the craziest thing ever.
By the way, I haven't referenced much of the online stuff because I was mainly talking about the lands, but it's true. Another reason why people hated on Tech and said you're online is because in all these online seasons, you were always one of the top teams, and obviously with some of the best lineups, you were like competing for the title, etc. Right? Even though people will hate them, be like, who cares about online play? As I said earlier, there weren't many tournaments. Like online play has to count as well. Like this team actually, maybe history doesn't remember it, but you were a top team for years, right?
Yeah, I think in Cal Invite we were like top. We would get top 3 or 4 like 6 or 7 straight seasons. So it was commonplace after after our first season. We were in the playoffs. We were like one of the top few seeds, but then we'd lose in the first round or the second round. So we never really won the playoff games. I don't think we tried really hard in the online matches. Everyone was so focused on CPL and practicing for that. I mean, they were big and they were important, but CPL trumped everything back in those days. And it's funny because I looked back because we used to keep all of the stats on our website, and our record on LAN percentage was actually higher than our online win percentage.
Oh, okay.
Like for all time, like we had like 600 total matches, but like it was like 0.4% high. Like we were 7.71% and 7.5. So we actually won higher percentage of LAN events or tournament matches than we did online. So another kind of funny, you called us online, but we won more matches on LAN than we did online.
Yeah, one of the interesting things as well is, as you say, for all these years where you were putting in all these hours, you were a big figure, etc. When you disappeared, you just disappeared. It was like someone switched the light off. You were just out. So I wondered actually on that sense, were you someone were you burned out from the game or something? I know you put a lot of hours in trying to be a top player, right?
Yeah, I think because the last CPL we had was the Winter 2005 CPL, and we kind of had another one of those blue-collar scrappy teams. It was like Spider, Grand Block, Griff, and we beat a European team there. But, like, I think we lost the next 2 matches and finished, like, middle of the pack somewhere. And I remember after that, a bunch of those players quit the team, and I was just kind of so dejected. So I was like, I can't rebuild this team again. Looking back, I should have just, absorbed one of them hot Cal M teams, the guys that never got the chance, see what they had, because that's kind of what happened in later years in these sports. You just get the hot gun, and you give them a chance, and they're not learning to play. So I wish I had just done that and absorbed one of those, hot teams, or just disbanded the team and tried to join another team. But I think I was so demoralized after that, because so many years, you want to do well at the CPL, and it's just another one that you failed at. So I just kind of stopped playing. I did make a comeback like 2 years later when I joined EG, which was a funny trial experiment. But yeah, I just kind of stopped playing, and then when I went to EG, and that didn't work out after like 6 months, and then it was completely done after that.
Give me the story on that then.
Yeah, so like I guess I had been out of the scene for a year or two, and Alex Garfield messaged me out of the blue. He's like, "Hey man, a bunch of people are quitting EG. I need a leader on this team." And I was like, I don't know, man. I don't play anymore. He's like, "I'm going to pay you." So I was like, okay.
All right.
It was like something small, like it was like $200 or $300 a month, and I think I only got paid for like 2 months. I don't remember how it went, but he actually did pay. So like I get on this EG team, and it was like Bloodshot's little brother and a bunch of the EG guys, and none of them like really wanted to play anymore. Like they were like, right. I tried to whip them into shape. I was like, "Come on, guys, we need to be on a practice." Like I had set a plan, and it was just a disaster. Like they they just never wanted to come online and practice. Like, well, we're never going to get any better if we don't practice. So I think I talked to Alex Garfield, and we just kept recruiting more and more people. And DeBears actually came on the team, so I was teammates with DeBears again. And then I think Tool and a bunch of people, maybe even Moses was on that team. I don't remember who all was on that team, but it was short-lived. It was like 4 or 5 months, and it was like a Code 5 tournament we went to in Las Vegas, and we just got utterly destroyed. We played the other Jay Gilbert's team, and I think we lost like, it was 15 rounds then, but it wasn't close. It was like 16-3 or something. Okay. And I just remember in the middle of that match, I was like, can't do this anymore. I can't compete. Like, I couldn't stay concentrated in the match. Maybe I was calling strats or something, which I hated doing. But, I knew then in that match, losing to the other Jay Gilbert, that it was over. I was like, I can't do this anymore.
By the way, obviously, like, the crossover wasn't perfect. Like, basically, it was like after you'd sort of retired that he came along, like, saying it. Did someone ever tell you, any player, like, there's another guy who's like a top player, his name is literally Jay Gilbert?
I think he was like a main player when I was like, when Tech was still around a little bit, and like he was an up and coming player, and people thought he was like our little brother at that time.
Right. They thought it was like the third one. Oh, the fourth. There's Mini Gilbert as well. I forgot. There's a fourth one. Yeah, they thought it was the fourth brother, right?
Yeah, and then so like I disappeared for a year or two, and then came back to EG, and then by the time I started playing again, like he was the man, and this he was the up and coming player, so it was kind of funny. I do remember chatting with him a little bit back in the day, and we joked about it, but it was right at the tail end, and he was just getting started, and he was a really good player. Like, he had it figured out. I think he was one of those young players too, but like he knew, like, even the few times I met him or watched him, he was like, he knew how to be a professional gamer. So like, something that all of us old Counter-Strike players, none of us knew how to do that. We didn't know how to be professional players. We just wanted to frag and, have fun. But he had it figured out.
By the way, on the EG lineup you talk about, did Bloodshot Stevenson actually play on the lineup as well?
No. So it was like his little brother, and he wasn't on the team anymore there. I don't remember who all was on the team, but it was kind of like they were phasing out their lineup, and they brought me in, and we just kind of switched things up.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
One teammate I did want to talk about, because I referenced him earlier, but I didn't actually ask about what he was like as a teammate, is obviously Jaden. Because here's a guy where, first of all, not only was he a skilled player, but I always thought, because I knew him a little bit like socially, dude, I always thought he seems from the outside like one of the most fun teammates you could have.
He was. No, he had a blast. Like, he was always having a good time. He was always fun. He was a good team. He was very consistent. Like he was just always top performing. I don't ever remember him really having a bad match. So like, he had a full career before like he was even on our team, because I went back and watched your reflections because I didn't know what you could ask on these. And I saw you just did one with him, and I was like, man, I don't even remember half of the stuff he did, because I only remember him from the Riot Squad and like that falling out and joining us. I only vaguely knew of the 3D days. I wasn't like a big fan back then watching all the matches. So like, he was like top of the line, top tier player for years before, he came into our lineup, and we were just up and coming, So that's kind of why we wanted him on the team. We're like, this guy has a name, everyone knows he is, he's a good player, and he always had fun. And him and DeBears were buddies, so they were always cutting it up. They acted like they were brothers too. So it was kind of interesting dynamic we had.
I thought an interesting question I could ask you, because it's going to probably blow the mind of a casual player. When they hear you say stuff like some of your answers here, they're going to think like, it's not very serious back then. What the hell? Like, you're not joining another team, you're not being pro. But if I explain it this way, right, the reason why it's totally logical to me you wouldn't see the game the same way is, first of all, because you weren't in a top team, even though your team's competing with like 3D and European teams, they had like fucking salaries and money and sponsors. Basically, the joke is, because of where you were situated, you were in Texas. That's where all the CPLs were. The joke is, you were just a guy who was just really good at Counter-Strike, lived in Texas. So you actually didn't have to have sponsorship. As long as in the game you could beat him, you could just go to the tournament, right?
Yeah, so we would, we'd load up the car and drive. If no one paid our gas, we didn't pay our hotel room. We never had a sponsorship till the very end, and even the ones we had, it was like a little tiny sponsorship, maybe paid fraction of the expense fee. So everything we paid was out of pocket. So you do all this work all year. We weren't in it for the money. It would have been nice, but like back then, it was a little bit of money. But the amount of work that you had to do to go into it, at the end of the day, didn't really add up, even if you did place high. So. It was fun. If we didn't live in Texas, I don't know if we would have went to the CPL or would have been so serious. But the fact that it was always in Dallas, and, we lived in Houston, it kind of made it easier that, that was where we were going to go each time. So if it had been somewhere else, that's a good thought. I never never thought if we would go to the West Coast to play in the CPL. We probably would.
Maybe in a
Just 'cause
van
it
or
was
something,
so
like you
cool.
said, just drive cross country or something. Yeah.
Yeah, we would have taken a road trip. We did that when Jaden was on our team. We took a road trip from Dallas to Chicago, and our manager Laurent, who was the admin that ran all the tournaments back in the day, he was our tech manager. He rented a van and drove us 24 hours straight to Chicago.
No, okay.
We didn't stop at all, and it was the craziest experience. But that's the funnest things I remember is us piling in a car, driving across town with all those big monitors strapped in, trying not to break anything. Those were the fun days, and doing that and go to LAN tournaments, and being in the LAN area or the BYOC area, and just practicing and playing, or being at someone's house. Those were the fun things back in the day. That I don't know if they do those these days. They're too professional or serious.
Yeah, the other problem as well, dude, which is another reason why I think a modern day fan will actually have to really listen to the context we're putting in here, is the other thing that won't make sense to them is because in the modern day, everyone has DSL connections, low ping, everyone has a great PC. The joke is now, everyone you really do play from your bedroom. And then if you get good, become a pro. And it's pro and casual is such a night and day difference. Whereas the difference is back then, like you're saying, the reason you'd test yourself is there used to be a billion Counter-Strike LANs in NA back then. As you're saying, if you were a local player, so you're from Texas, Jaden's from I know Moses and Jaden are from Midwest or something, or there's people in SoCal, whatever area you're in back then, you could just go to local tournaments almost every weekend and it would be the other top players. It was kind of I would say it was a grassroots scene that built up in level. There was a lot of activity because, as you're saying, some of the best stories people have are not even from the CPLs. It's all the stupid local lands where you take a ringer who's another Cal player. And it was a whole scene back then, right?
Yeah, so that was in the days where they had the LAN cafes. So a lot of the tournaments would be at those LAN cafes, which those aren't a thing anymore. I don't think I've never seen one in years. But those places would throw the tournaments. But yeah, those were the fun. The Lethal Gamers tournament, they would have one every 3 months. So that was where we would practice on LAN. But it would usually be other Texas teams, and usually at the time, we would beat most of them. Occasionally there would be one other good one, like Forsaken or somebody that would challenge us. The most time we would just go there, have fun, beat up on the other Texas teams. But then you got to know people and you're friends with everyone, so it's kind of a small community feel, and it never crossed over. It's not like the Texas teams would go play in East Coast local LAN tournaments. It was kind of your own little bubble. So the weird thing was the play styles that came from that. The Central teams played different from the East Coast teams, and then the West Coast teams, nobody knew how they played. I don't even think they knew how they played. They were just all over the map until the very end. So it was interesting because it was just completely different. It was kind of subsectioned by the coast in the middle of the country.
Since you say you didn't really get many offers to join other teams, or at least you didn't entertain them, does that mean back then, were you not doing loads of networking? Were you not friends with other people in all the other teams and stuff? Were you a bit more shy back then? What was it like?
No, I thought I was friends. We'd play pugs and stuff. So I think it really was. They didn't think I'd leave tech, is what I always assumed. If I had quit the team, but I was on it so long, and I think my brother played till 2004. So, that was right before the end. So, and then I kept it going for a year. So it was I don't think I was never a free agent. You know what I mean? So if I had just all right, I'm done, I quit. Maybe that's when the offers would have came.
Was there ever?
I don't think people. I don't think people didn't want me on their team. I just, if I had quit, maybe there would have been some other team I could have joined.
Was there ever any big name player that you almost got to join tech that didn't join?
No, I think we had.
Did you try to convince people? By the way, would you try and poach friends and stuff, or other good players when you got to know them?
I'm trying to think back. There was, the only other good players that weren't on our team that could have maybe were the 3D players. But there's no way you're going to get Rambo to leave 3D to come play in tech.
Exactly. Yes.
And it was always logistically difficult if you didn't get the people that lived around you, because if you did want to go to a LAN tournament, it's that much more difficult. So you were kind of regionally locked if you wanted to really play in some of the local LANs and go to some of these tournaments, because you didn't really look at the West Coast. I know some of the other teams did, but it was just always more difficult if they weren't within a state or two of where you lived.
By the way, since it was like one of the memes, famously the team's Tech, and then like there was a couple of others. Like this was one where the joke was, hence why you said it was called the Elude clan by people. Wasn't it supposed to be that there wasn't actually a meaning to Tech, and it was just like 3 letters or something? Was there ever an original meaning to what? Was it an acronym? Did it stand for something originally?
Okay, I'll give you the insights
because it was like a secret for a long time, right? It was never told.
I'll spill the beans. It's not really that good. So when we were in the OGL league, I think the team name was the Elite. So it was like some terrible name. It was just TE. So we didn't even have the C on our name. And then back then you called yourselves clans instead of teams or orgs or whatever. So we turned in to the Elite to the Elite clan. And then like some point early on, we're like, this is lame. We don't like the name.
Sure.
So we're like, we're just Tech. And then it became a meme on the internet. Like we weren't trying to make it a meme. It was just like, everyone's like, what does it mean? And we're like, well, they could have went and Googled it a little bit and found out that it was the Elite clan. And I think we had it on one of our websites in the early days. But we were just like, nah, we don't go by that anymore because everyone just called us Tech. No one was going to say we were the Elite clan, so it was just easier to say that. So, yes, we did have a name for it at one time. It just kind of dissolved itself to Tech only.
Since you said that when your dad was watching these games, he was just watching a scoreboard, like, I guess they won or lost, whichever way. Did your family actually understand how big CS was? Because that's the other thing I wondered about with it being in Texas. To them, they might just think you just go to the local tournament. It's like, dude, this is the World Championship.
So the funny story with that is, there was no money in the thing. So like, we're in high school and like, your parents want you to go to college and whatever. So he hated that we played video games all day. He couldn't stand it. And then it wasn't until we brought home a check or money from a tournament that he was like, oh, okay, I see why you do this now. So it was like up until that point until we started playing money. And then he became a fan and started watching all our things. Like I'll send him in this video and he'll probably reminisce about some of the stuff that because he was like tech fan on GotFrag forums or something. So my dad was he was an S poster back in the day. So he would get in the GotFrag and like, it was like Tech Dad or I don't remember what his alias was, but he was chatting away with the internet kids on the the GotFrag forums back in the day. So it's kind of funny.
One thing that's wild, dude, is even though now when I do all these interviews, because we're all like 20 years older and adults and have had lives and stuff, like I say, everyone actually, like I said about the funk point, everyone tends now, like you did, to forget all the bad stuff and just remember all the good times. But one thing I want to ask you is this. It's hilarious to me, though, because I have a really good memory, because I remember this era, especially when you played in NA, mate, everyone was just permanently talking shit to everyone. Like every team was like, the West Coast team's all cheat, this guy's not good on LAN, like Team 3D doesn't deserve their salaries. Like this guy's just, I don't know, fucking douchebag. Like, dude, and spoiler, obviously we won't say anything about it here, but back then, you can imagine the early internet guys, there was no regulation. Like people, just the things people were typing would not get away with now. They were wild. Like the shit talking scene was mental back then.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it now. Like the kids playing Call of Duties, they say like they say crazy. The people playing in the North American scene when I was there. Most of them were in high school or just in college. So, they were, it's just a lot of immaturity. That's why the teams like 3D, the little bit older teams, the little bit more professional teams, that's why they did so good. The younger kids never figured it out, that they were just a little bit more mature, and the European teams were even more mature than them, so it was just immaturity. I'm sure if you go into like League of Legends, I'm sure they say the same type of stuff. It's a little bit more public now, because back then, like when you'd say something in a match, it doesn't go on Twitter. It didn't go on to, so like if that was a thing back in the day, social media, I think it would have been completely different. People would have been like, oh, I can't say this stuff because it'll get out there. And, we didn't say anything bad. We would just make fun of each other all the time, just kind of rile each other up. It was like, who didn't do good on LAN is basically until the next LAN. And then you make fun of that person,
Yes.
You got it and you gave it. And it was just, the community back then. And I don't think anyone was really, heartbroken over it or, upset over it. It was just like, okay, he said that, like that's what we say to each other. You're just fighting.
One of the other bad things back in the day, I mean, to be fair, a lot less stuff became public because, as you said, there was no social media, there was websites, and even then, like, it was actually, like, it wasn't really the thing that people leaked stuff. Actually, a lot of stuff behind the scenes stayed behind the scenes. So I can tell you, Elude, I actually know some old school players, I can tell you off air, who actually just straight up told me at times years later, like, yeah, I did used to just cheat online sometimes. But here's the wild thing, dude, is they're not all the ones you'd guess. Like, for example, some of them also were really good on LAN. Like, they could take the cheats away and be awesome too. But some of them just had that attitude of, like, fuck them. There's no anti-cheat, so I'll just do it online. So, for example, I know famously a whole bunch of West Coast players were like this, because famously they used to have a really healthy LAN circuit, so they could always be like, no, look, last weekend, you know, I beat this guy here with like Rival or Death is Eternal or something. But like, I've heard online a bunch of them would just fucking cheat if they, especially, this is mad, but the logic was, especially if they thought you were cheating, then they're definitely going to cheat. You know what? I know that sounds so weird to a fan now, but that was like the logic back then.
That was the meme back then, and it was true. So we hated scrimming the West Coast teams because you would play them and then you would beat them, and it would be like 10-2, and they're like, you're cheating, and we weren't cheating. We were just maybe we had a little bit better ping, and they would all leave the server and then come back, and then like suddenly they're they don't miss a shot, and you're like, oh my god. So it was like there was a point there where you just wouldn't want to play them, and I think they calmed down after a little while. That's just why the West Coast teams, they were the funniest about it though. So yeah, that was definitely a thing with them. If they thought you were cheating, they and I was just like, what are you guys doing? Like, what are you practicing? Like, what do you get out of this to beat us in this practice online? Like, we're not cheating, we're just practicing. And so that's part of the immaturity.
This might sound like a bit of an out of left field topic, but I want to try tie this into what we're talking about now, which was, here's the difference, right? When you guys or Team 3D, if some team like that or player talks shit, like you say, it's just banter online. But I noticed one thing the West Coast teams almost did try to use to their advantages. People might know this, but at the time, actually, culturally, for real, in those like SoCal lands, there were people who were like part of gangs or part, like, there was a lot of like Asian kids, for example, who were caught up in like dodgy life, but also played CS. So it was also sort of implied when they would talk shit, like we might just beat you up at the LAN or some fucked up like they were all trying to be like tough guys or some shit. Do you remember?
I believe that. I don't remember any particular incidents, but I would believe that would be the case. That doesn't surprise me at all.
Fair enough. Right, what about this then? It sounds to me like you have like fairly good memories of your CS career, etc. How do you in your mind compartmentalize it? Like, what box do you put it in? Do you actually think of yourself as like, it's sort of like it was a sport and I was like a sportsman, but I don't know if you want the analogy, it's like being an early baseball player or an NFL player at the beginning or something, right? It's not like the riches, but you were top of the sport. So how do you think of your career?
Yeah, there's like a term, there's like the barbecue circuit. We were like the barbecue circuit before the professional circuit,
Right.
I think we were part of the professional gaming scene, but back in the day, we were closet gamers. Like it wasn't cool to be a gamer. Like now, every kid wants to be on YouTube and Twitch, and they get their parents to buy them stuff, and their parents know everything what it is because they've grown up with it now. But like when we were growing up, it wasn't cool to play video games. Like if your friends didn't play video games, you didn't tell them, like, because they would make fun of you. They're like, what are you doing sitting on a computer all day? So I do see it as like we were kind of the forefront of esports professional. I always wonder what it'd be like if we had, if I had like a Twitch account or something back in the day. I'm like, man, maybe I'd still be playing. Too old for that now, but it's just a funny thought. Like maybe I would have made more money and like actually turned it into a profession. Because back then, it wasn't a profession. You couldn't make a living off of playing sports until like the time I was out.
Well, one thing that was cool, I did want to ask about this towards the end of the interview, is another reason I knew you beyond just as a player was I obviously used to work for ESEA way back in the day, which was the latter years of your career. And I remember at the time, just like Jaden, you were one of the people who put mad hours in doing those lessons because like this was a way you could make real money. Like people would pay like $30, $50 an hour. And I remember, didn't you say something mad? Like you actually like bought a whole car from it or something mad? Like
there was like... Right? Yeah, there was like an ESEA meme on the day because I said something in an interview that I was like, man, I'm making so much money. Maybe ESEA will pay for my car next or something. Who knows? Maybe I'll get a house. But actually, I look back and I regretted that because I could have done so much more. Like I was lazy about it.
Right.
Oh my God. Like some of those guys, I think Destroyer was the guy. He'd give like 6 lessons a day. So like, I don't remember what we were trying. It was like 20, 30 $40 an hour. It was a good amount. Yeah. So, like, he was making good money. Like I could have done that. I didn't have the desire to do it. I kind of had obligation, and I didn't think I was good at teaching. I remember Jaden was an instructor on there, and like I had my first one booked, and I was like, Jaden, help me. Like, what do I teach someone? And like he had like a script he goes through now. Like looking back, like I would know exactly. Okay. I would just kill some time and talk through it. But like I was 19, 20, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to teach people. So Jaden was like, here, do this. So I like copied what he did and kind of did it halfway. But, most of it, I think some of those players were just like trying to meet their fans and hang out and talk with them. So it was like they're paying to just hang out with you and like try to be your friend or something. So like, it was cool for that. But I don't know how much actual Counter-Strike training they did, but I wish I had done more. I really did. Like I could have. I think they paid us back in the day to do articles, and I did a few, and then like I just stopped doing it because apparently I didn't like money enough back then.
Okay. By the way, since I referenced him earlier, I should ask. Obviously, there was a third Gilbert. Wasn't he called Mini Gilbert or something? What was his name?
He Mini Gilbert, and then he went by B Gilb. He joined the team after Matt left. I gave him a shot, so like he gets mad at me because I got him on the team, and that like I think I kicked him off the team because he wouldn't listen to me. So like it's just a funny dynamic. I was the little brother at one time fighting with him, and then like he came on the team. He was a little brother.
Did he put in enough hours? Was he actually like trying to be pro like you guys?
He was trying to be. I don't know if he worked at it as much as we did. I don't know if he saw how many hours we put in before that. I think he thought it would just come more natural to him. But he had really good. He probably had better reflexes than both of us. So if he actually worked at it, he would have been better than I was. Because he had the flick shot down and he could spray. He just he was younger than we were. He's 5 or 6 younger, so he was kind of the younger tier. Didn't kind of get how to be a professional. The kind of things we dealt with and didn't figure out till later, till we lost our skill set. So he kind of fell in that bucket. But it was fun, Like it was nice that we got to play together. It'd been cool if we all three played together. I think we did like on a Texas LAN or something. But it is what it is.
By the way, if Gouki heard this interview, would he get mad that I sort of implied he wasn't that good, like skill wise? Did he think he was?
He will get mad because he kind of had a chip on his shoulder. The funny thing is, he played better on LAN than he did online. So like I got the knock for being online and not playing good on LAN, but like he didn't he'd play okay online. Like he was running the team, calling the strats, which I found out later that completely takes you out of the game of like trying to be the fragger. So like he sacrificed to do that, and when I did it, it hurt my skill set later in the career. But yeah, he'll take offense to that, but he'll be happy that I pointed out that he played better on LAN than he did online. So like yeah, if you can find any of the old matches, he'll be second or third in those LAN tournaments on the leaderboard. So like he played pretty good on LAN. He was consistent.
In your prime, by the way, were you someone, you seemed like it, who was very diligent about trying to practice and grind to be really good? Yeah. Seemed like you practiced a lot of your technique and put in mad hours, right?
Yeah, so it was after that 2001 CPL. I remember I was like super inspired that I wanted to be like, Team X3, the American team. I remember sitting in school one day and I was like, man, I'm going to go to the CPL one day and I'm going to, like I had these grand dreams and I was like writing it out on a piece of paper and, making these fake brackets of how we'd march through the brackets, because that was the thing back then. Sure. Like those brackets were huge. Those double elimination brackets were fun. But yeah, I definitely worked at it a lot the first the couple of years that I was in my prime. Like I'd pug and I'd play after hours, and then towards the end of my career, I didn't put in the hours. And now looking back, I was like, yeah, that's why my skills dropped off. Like I probably could have been just as good, if not better, because I've seen later years that some of these older players kept playing, like some of those Europeans. I don't know exactly who they are, but they played well into their 20s, and maybe I could have, but there was no money in it. You had to go to school and get a job and do those things, so it's kind of ran out of time on that and desire.
Have you ever, since the 1.6 portion of your career ended, have you ever tried to like play a multiplayer esport type game heavily? Have you ever tried to do a comeback in any games?
Not really. There was a period, probably like six or 7 years ago, where we played in ESEA main, and I think even Matt might have played in it, or Brad. Oh, okay. And we played with the Tidor brothers, who were on our team one time with Funk. So I remember I did it for fun, and we were like in open and beating a bunch of kids, and it was easy. And then we got into main, and we were mostly beating people. And then it was like we were about to get into like the Premier League, and then I started taking it way too seriously, and then I wasn't having fun. So then I just kind of stepped back. But no, I know now the amount of work you have to put into it. Like it's a full-time job. So like as an adult, I can't put in 8 hours a day to play video games. So I'm not going to go try to compete with these kids that play these games. So I've kind of like completely shelved that off, that like there's no chance of ever competing in anything like that these days.
What did you think of CSGO?
I didn't really like it. I've tried to play it online a little bit. There's just something about the mechanics of the game that aren't as accurate as 1.6 or even 1.5 and 4. I actually liked Counter-Strike before 1.6. Before it went on Valve, I think it was actually even more pure. Like
Yes.
the closest thing to it now, I'll play some of the shooter games. The one that I kind of liked was Fortnite because it had really good mechanics, So I played that. I tried to play Valorant, but none of them ever stick. I'm really more of a basic 2D graphic guy. Give me the pure mechanics with the most FPS. So these spectacle games, they just don't ring with me. My days I play Stardew Valley, so that's my game or something like that. Some lame offline game. No, I'm just kidding. It's not lame. It's pretty fun.
Funny thing is, when you say that, by the way, I actually agree. I've always low-key thought CSGO is actually like a worse game, etc. A lot of old school people, though, I don't know if they've just got role school like that, they all just go, it's so similar, it's really just like 1.6. And I'm like, I agree with you. The engine feel is what's off to me, mate. Like, I've even done this. I've even gone and installed 1.6 like a year or two ago and gone in and gone, I just misremember, I'm doing it, and it's no joke. If you do it and go in, it instantly feels amazing. Like, the spray feels so fucking sick. Like, if you fire the USP slowly, every bullet hits there. Oh, that engine was fucking fire.
And there was something with the spray patterns too. There was an art to it. So like the spray patterns weren't as random as they were in CS:GO, and I think I've seen videos on that now. So like it turned into an artful skill set of like predicting the spray pattern. Because I think I was famous for my rifle spray because I had figured out some point early in my career that while you're spraying, if you wiggled your mouse, like your bullets would stay closer in the center. So like people would watch my demos and they'd see, why is this cursor shaking? Maybe that's why they thought I was cheating, but I literally learned this technique where I would just shake back and forth with my hand and like the spray pattern would stay closer in the middle. So like there was a way to like, the more you play, the more you learn kind of how the mechanics learn, and they didn't change. So like you could only keep learning more of the mechanics.
If obviously you didn't, but if you had like gone to another team or something like that, is there like a set of people you would have liked to have played with? Is there someone you thought you should have played with in your career?
I never looked at playing with people like that. There was a couple of players I really liked. The two were like Method and Rambo. They were the like consistent rifle fraggers. I remember watching Method on a LAN. We went to a Chicago LAN one time. And I was watching behind him because I think they shared our computers or something. And like his aim was crazier than anyone I'd ever seen. And then Rambo was just so consistent. So those would have been the two. The funny thing is, back in those days, it seemed like everybody had been on everybody's roster. So it was just a matter of time before you did play with him, and then time just ran out. You know what I mean? So yeah, a couple of those players would have been fun. But I think we had fun. I don't have any regrets with who we played with or didn't play with.
At the end of this interview, do you have like a final message of anyone you want to shout out or say hello to?
Just shout out to Banshee Marie. A couple of my gamer friends too. I'm going to see when they message me after this comes out, because this last video you did for me, I remember I was driving across town. A couple of my buddies were like, "Hey man, Thorin just dropped this video. I didn't know you were." So like I got pinged by like 4 people when the last one came out. So I'm gonna see how long till they see this. But what's up, Shipper, MJ, MJW, or whenever you guys see this, I don't think I have a final message. Just work at your craft. I don't know who watches your channel, but if it's people trying to be good at esports or something, you got to work at it. It doesn't come easy. You got to get in there and grind and put in the work with pretty much everything in life, not just esports.
Now, I'm a baller, a visionary, and a hard worker, so you can imagine I'll always get by in esports. But at the same time, I very much appreciate the people who support me, such as Matt Pugnatio Rakula, Ahmed Haju, Tosh, Bot Pounder 420, Animosity, Toucan, Tobias Bernasconi, Kovacevic, Jensen Go, and as always, special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest that will appear in my content? Do you want to ask a question in my monthly AMA? Maybe you want teasers, find out who the upcoming guests are for some reflections or interview content. Or do you want to be one of those nerds asking me questions, talking about the old days and new things and all those long, lengthy, topical discussions that I do? Well, if any of those tickle your fancy, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today, where? Via the Patreon link in the description box.